created this corporatism that runs medicine. Wall Street rakes off the profits, the patients are unhappy, the doctors are unhappy, and it's a monopoly now. Who lobbyists us in Washington? The drug companies and the HMOs, they come, and now what is the cry for? Socialized medicine. That's not the answer. We need to get the government out of the way. Inflation hits the middle class and the poor the most. Those are the people who are losing it. It's just not minorities, anybody poor, because inflation wipes out the middle class, and we have to deal with that. If you have a product that's not dealt with by government, prices go down when you have modern technology. In medicine, with all this technology, prices still go up. But that's because the government is involved. We don't have enough competition. There's a doctor monopoly out there. We need alternative health care freely available to the people. They ought to be able to make their own choices and not controlled by the FDA, preventing them to use some of the medications.
Thank you, sir. Senator Brownback.
I mean, we have never, in a capitalistic society, ever have seen people starving. It's only under socialism and welfareism where government takes charge of this, taking charge of making sure that they have education and medical care and housing. And that's why today we're seeing the collapse of the housing bubble. Who's losing their houses? The poor people who can't meet the requirements of making their payments. So the government was well intended to give houses to everybody, but all of a sudden the people on the margin are losing their houses. So yes, if you really care about people and you really care about a humanitarian approach to government, you have to believe in free markets. It's capitalism that eliminated child labor, eliminated poverty. You do not have famines in true capitalism. You will have poor people. You're going to have people that won't have medical care.
Right.
But,
I was just going to ask about medical care. Aren't there some...
Today, if you're a burn victim, probably any part of the country, but especially in Texas, you can go to the Shriner Hospital in Galveston. And nobody gets turned away. I started medicine in the early 60s. No government. I worked for $3 an hour as an MD in an emergency room. Nobody got turned away. It was a church hospital. Nobody asked him what your income was. And today, everybody gets charged a maximum because there are no charity hospitals anymore. And the government's there, and they have a lot of burdens. There's extra expenses and demands that aren't legitimate. And so therefore, they have to charge the maximum. If they're not on Medicaid, they put them on Medicaid. So it's a bad system.
Did the market create the charity hospitals?
Sure, freedom does. Freedom does. Who created our great universities early on? Not the government. Our churches did, and other private institutions. So, and we undermined all that. That's what we've been doing for 100 years. We've been systematically undermining a system that was a real blessing to us, that gave us our great prosperity.
What do you think about entitlements? How much is it? Why should Americans be concerned about this number that most people know is growing?
Right. The entitlement system is misnamed, I think, because entitlement means that you're entitled to it, that you have a right to it. And people have asked me in the media, and they, with a surprise, they'll say, "Don't you believe that medical care is a right?" And my answer is no. The people aren't entitled to somebody else's productive effort. And the government has nothing. The government only has what it takes from somebody else. So it can't provide anything without taking it through taxation or through the inflationary process.
I want to take care of until we have a better system. But I want young people to get out of Social Security. Why should they have to pay for it? Because they're going to pay for these trillions of dollars of obligation. They're not going to get anything out of it. So most young people say, yeah, I'd like to get out of that. But how would you pay for the ones dependent? It has to come from overseas spending. If you add up everything that we do overseas, and now with the constant additional obligation to take care of all those injuries and sickness, I mean, we're up to over $1 trillion a year in maintaining our empire. So I'd say hundreds, maybe $500 billion, you could say, have a stronger national defense, have the money to cut some of the deficit down, and still tide people over who are dependent, those who have become dependent on government. We don't have to attack them. And sometimes, the conservative approach is, oh yeah, entitlements. And they're trying to nickel-dime some of these programs now. At the same time, they have no remorse whatsoever to sending more and more troops around the world and killing people, and our people getting killed. I mean, it's an absurd policy where a more sensible approach would be come back, stop the killing, save some money, help the people that are dependent on these funds. And it's not as antagonistic. But in my own heart, in my understanding of economics, if you really care about helping the poor people, you need more Googles. You need more companies that are rich and strong and people are well paid and they get their health benefit. That's what we need. We need more freedom. We don't need more handouts and more safety nets, because the safety nets protect only the bureaucrats.